Welcome to Monetizing Innovation. Today we have another great show, and just to remind everybody for the format here, innovation isn't just the big idea on the whiteboard; it's the hard decisions, the missed signals, and the leaders who keep moving forward anyway. This show dives into real stories behind breakthroughs in life sciences, healthcare, and tech. How ideas become results, how teams aligned under pressure, and how strategy turns into execution. If you're building something bold or looking for clarity to lead with confidence, you're in the right place. Press play and let's turn innovation into impact. And like I said, today is a really special guest. We have Billy Stone. And Billy is a seasoned financial advisor with Thrivent, working out of High Point, North Carolina, with broad licensure across multiple states and a commitment to helping people align finance with values. He guides clients towards long term financial security through personalized planning, retirement strategies, and insurance solutions. Whether you're exploring retirement, investing, or estate planning, Billy shares practical insights and value driven philosophy that helps individuals and families build confident financial future. Billy, it's such a great pleasure to have you on here because I think while we introduced the financial background too, you have just such a long, interesting career too, from doing things on a mechanical engineering background, working in the engineering space, making that difficult transition, right, to move into an entire new industry during COVID. And, I thought your story is such a great story to share with folks, especially because innovation is not just about products. Sometimes it's about making some of these tough decisions and these life changes.
Sure.
With that, yeah, I'd like to, um, that introduction, just kind of turn it over to you and, really talk about some of your work with the value-driven financial planning.
Sure. Appreciate you having me on, John. It's great to be here, and what a great opportunity to talk about that. So, as most people know, financial advisors are seem to be plentiful in our industry, and you seem to always get a call from an advisor that you don't want to talk to. Sometimes some of us can complain that we don't hear from our advisor enough, and so, but we try to take care of a number of clients in our book of business, and it's a great opportunity for us to lead and shepherd and to walk them through their journey. And for me, it's just being creative and being able to focus on a different process or different kind of outcome for clients is really kind of what drives me, to do what I want to do here for them. And so it's always great to be able to look into what they're doing and really kind of say, hey, what's different about this situation? How can I bring something that maybe somebody else wouldn't bring to the table?
No, absolutely, and I think you've always had that innovative background too, so when you had the opportunity to combine sort of that creative thinking along with the values-based approach for the financial side, how did that journey take place? Could you share a little bit more about that?
Well, a lot of it's in my own journey, just understanding and getting to know who I am as a person and what I like to do, and that was really um, formed and forged, if you will, through my prior career. I spent over 2 decades in manufacturing stuff. I mean, building a product, and was able to do had a lot of roles at that company, and that you can see on my LinkedIn. You can see all the different roles that I had, and some of those aren't even listed there. But just coming through all those and starting to understand more about who I am as a person, how my faith, my own faith itself grounded me and my parents and what they did, and how my dad taught me about finances and taught me about investing. And I was able to have that and merge all that together with some of the engineering, technical, and the process stuff that I was doing, and found out that I was more of a creative type than I really had envisioned myself to be. And all of a sudden, I realized, oh, I'm left-handed. I figured out, oh, that's where my creativity is. Have that left-handed piece in there. But by and large, the bigger picture was I found out you can be creative in different ways, and you can be innovative in different ways, and it doesn't have to follow the mainstream approach. And so I really became, and part of what I was doing before was kind of the idea person, and the one that kind of was was either, didn't know well enough to throw an idea out there that was crazy, or just said, "Hey, let's purposely look at some crazy ideas or some off the wall ideas, and that was one of the things that I brought to the table for my prior company and the teams that I worked with, and so and that's kind of what I still latch on to today is like I'm open to ideas, I'm open to things out of the norm and out of the ordinary. It takes a little bit more effort, a little bit more thought, but it also gives me a chance to be creative in my own way with clients and what I do today, and bridge some of that into what I am. So, I think that to sum up and answer your question is, the journey was really discovering that I was more innovative, more creative than I thought I was, and that I actually enjoyed it. So, and seeing that, I'm still looking for that opportunity to have that creativity and that innovation for my clients and what I'm doing today.
No, I think that's fantastic, and it really aligns well with, I think that values-driven financial planning, we've talked about how Thrivent emphasizes connecting financial or finances to personal values.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
how do you help clients do that with their finances, applying your creativity?
Absolutely. So in the values-based side, I mean, we really are driving our dedicated planning, what's what we call it. The rest of the world calls it financial planning. We put our own name and own spin to it. And obviously we know a lot of our clients are faith-based and they have
Mhm,
their own set of values that a lot of us share together, but really finding out what specifically they may like to do. One of our slogans is live generously. And so a client may want to live generously and show their generosity and be able to give in their community by volunteering at their local animal shelter. Some others volunteer at a pregnancy center, or some others give to a foster and adoption ministry or something like that. It's all over the place, and understanding that
mhm,
values piece and being able to say, what do we what do we need like, what do we need for that?
mhm.
How do we get to this point that what we have? How are we blessed to be here? What do we need to live on? And what do we need to live on in the future? And if we have some things that we have kind of left over, so to speak, what do we want to do with those? And how do we want to be charitable? Being able to walk clients through the current ways that we can based on our tax law and work with their CPA and work with us as well and to be able to give in charitable ways and that benefit them. I find that clients discover that they can be generous, be smart, and do all of that at the same time. And so that really comes bringing all that together is really starts with the financial planning. What are the investments doing? What are we doing for risk mitigation? How do we handle those things? Lay out the plan, give them opportunity to kind of fulfill that plan and implement it and then start working if they want to do investments with us or some of the risk mitigation, whether it be life insurance or long-term care or just whatever. It doesn't have to be a product, but just risk mitigation pieces on that. And it could be they have a large debt that they've been carrying that's going to be a risk to them and their long-term financial plan that we're trying to put in place. Looking at all those different avenues and understanding what that is and saying, hey, we need to adjust these. What you're doing today, maybe it doesn't align with your goals and values. Let's work together to try to maybe it's excessive spending, for example. Right.
Mhm.
Well, that's not really what they where they want to be. And maybe we can work together to kind of tamp that down a little bit and say, hey, why are we spending what we're spending? Or how do we and I'm going to show you how this can be a risk to your overall long-term portfolio. What does it do for that? So, being able to tailor make each plan for each individual, each family is something that it's that's really the fun of what I get to do, honestly.
No, that's fantastic, right? And I think, like you said, that really ties into your ability to be creative, right? By getting to know and understand your clients, what are their key goals? What do they value? Then
Yep.
you can get creative on, well, here are the right tools to
Right.
basically utilize. Well, based on that too, once you have been working with folks like that, you know, we've had a lot of change and uncertainty in the markets, right? Especially over the past few years. And when you look at that, what are some of the most important financial habits that you think individuals should focus on to build that long-term stability?
Well, I hate to go back to the basics, but the basics are part of it, to be honest with you, John. Obviously, the key is, spend less than you make, find some savings program that works for you. Uh, Understand that, a 401k is a tool. It's one of the tools you can use. There's multiple tools that you can use. Figure out what works for you. Some people, like my dad, for example, I've got clients like my dad that they really don't like insurance. They don't really like the idea of what that represents. And they forget that you've got a small amount of premium that you're paying for to leverage a larger benefit. And if in case something does happen, but in situations like that, we pivot to something else. What can we do to kind of mitigate these risks? You don't have to have this product. Let's figure it out together. So, the basics, spend less than you make, figure out your kind of overall plan, lay that out there, and then just really start to work on some type of accumulation strategy, understanding. But the bigger thing, the non-tangible, the non-numbers, what do you want to do? Do you want to retire? I've got clients that don't believe in retirement. They don't believe that that's what they should be doing. But why should I stop working? Why should I stop? Other people, they're like, as soon as I can get out of the rat race, that's great. Others like, it's great to entertain. I've got a young client in his late 20s, and he is in the food industry. And we started working on building his investment portfolio. And I said, so what else do you want to do? What are some of the goals you have? He's like, well, we're talking about opening up a food truck. You ever thought about like investing in that with your current owner? So it's in a small private business. And I said, talk to your owner about how can I be a part of this? Can I have my own food truck that's still branded what our brand is? Or how can I invest in that in some way? It's like, and being able to see that vision and that dream kind of come to life and him go, yeah. I said, whether it's with him or something. And we got a chance to talk about that. And it was nothing about finances. It was about his dreams, about his goals, about what he wanted to do. And it's just to be able to kind of say, maybe you're saving this money so that you can leverage this for a dream that you have. And if you're going to be a business owner and if you're going to stay with it over the long haul, you're going to be successful as a business owner. And you're likely going to be successful, more successful than you would be an employee, most likely
Yeah,
if you go after it. So you got a great chance at that, and you're going to multiply this investment that you have. It's going to be a better return. So being able to do that with clients and bring that around is a great way to help that. And so that's an example of a story of spend less than you make, start with a plan, and really start working on those goals. What do I want to do with my life? What's my goals this year? What are my goals? Am I going to retire? Am I not going to retire? What does that look like? It's not too early to start looking at that and start dreaming. And I have clients that they have difficulty coming up with goals. It's not easy. Well, I mean, what do I want to do if I'm in my 20s? I don't know what 40 years from now is going to look like. I have no
absolutely.
idea. But if you could, what would you continue doing, or what would you like to be doing? And so it's a great opportunity to walk with them on that journey as well, and to tie the financial in with the non-financial.
No, I really like that perspective because it's so important, right? If you're not aligning your finances with your long-term goals, right, it leads to, a lot of different problems that I think folks can run into. But one of the things I was thinking too, that with all the different vehicles and tools, and I like how you characterize it with like the risk, right? What are some of the common misconceptions that people commonly have about the retirement planning, and what steps do they need to take earlier to avoid stress later in life?
Well, we touched on a little bit of that, John, but
Mm.
I think the biggest misconception is that it's all a numbers game. And really and truly, there's a lot of folks out there who are reading headlines and they're seeing that they need 1,000,000, 2,000,000, and $3,000,000, and they don't realize, how am I going to get there? And no one's talked to them about the beauty of compounding investments, and how to stay risky for a longer period of time. And then when you get toward the end, you can start to put risk mitigation tools in place. And then some of those tools are financial, some of those are non-financial. But to really step back from the headlines, make it personal. What do I need based on what I want and what my goals are? So, for example, some clients, they just don't spend any money. And so why are you trying to get $3 million when, and I show the math to them, they're like, so we don't need that much money. I'm not saying whether you need that much money or not. I'm showing you what the numbers show based on where you are and what you can do in trying to take m- the mystery and the mystique of getting to that big magical number. Let's get rid of that and let's get it ground level where you are, Mr. Miss Client, and see based on your lifestyle, based on where you are, let's work together. Let's get some base level education on investments, on growth, on compounding, on risk mitigation. Let's look at all those things and let's back away from what everybody says you should be doing. Right. And people don't have a problem with someone coming up. If somebody were to come to your front door and or come to your door and they would be knocking on the door and said, you need to do this, this, and this. I don't even know you. Why are you telling me what to do? And then all of a sudden, what do I need to be doing this? But whether it's medical, financial, or whatever, sometimes we allow the outside voices to be too large in our lives. And recognizing that with clients when they're in that situation and walking them through that understanding of you don't need to look at these outside forces. You need to make it personal to you. And whether it's myself or another advisor, you need to get an advisor that's going to understand who you are, what your needs are, and what your goals are, what your dreams are, and then what does it look like to try to get there and to start painting that picture down that road. That's really one of the big things. I think one of the other misconceptions is that we had this big we as Americans typically have such a difficult time around money. And it doesn't disappear in the faith community as much as it should. And in other folks that it's just such a struggle here in America to put so much more value on money. And one of the things I liked about Thrivent, and I like it because even though it's their motto, it's one of their sayings, it's still true. It's like money is a tool. It's not an end goal. And so Thrivent had that. When I found out about Thrivent in 2020, I never heard about Thrivent before in my life. And here's a values-based, faith-based company that is a not-for-profit Fortune 500 company that's over 100 years old that is at the table with trying to serve its clients to the best of their ability to get this values-based approach to financial planning, to investing, to strategies, to risk mitigation. And so taking that money as a tool, not a goal, and saying, yeah, I agree with that. So how do we really implement what that looks like? And then for folks that are really stuck on that money piece and walking them through that and saying, hey, let's not look at that so much. And you've got that piece there. So I think that money conversation is good. I would say another, like, if I may jump in with another thing here, is just, you know, everybody knows that you got one shot at life. And if you've lived long enough to go through a 24-hour day, you may plan certain things in the day and things go south, as we say. My whole day got messed up. My day by 9 a.m., my day was blown up. I had plans for the day and it was all gone. Well, when we start looking at retirement and financial planning and then what that looks like for us as we exit the workplace and get into retirement years, we got one shot at this. And you can make plans, but you may not do it. The worst thing you could do is not make a plan, right? That's the worst thing you can do. And we got one shot at this, really. We've never done it before. And so why would you not want to work with someone who's already guiding people through retirement? I've got clients in their 70s and 80s and 90s, and I'm talking to clients that are not yet retired. And I'm saying, I know what life is like on the other side of the fence, so to speak. I can bring that wisdom from what they're telling me about their own experiences. I can bring that directly to those younger clients and those pre-retirees and speak to them about there is no do-over. You don't get another chance at this. Why not work with someone who you can establish a plan with? It's worthwhile to set that in motion.
I think that's such a wonderful perspective because, like you said, it's sort of all encompassing, right? When you can apply some of that wisdom,
Right.
um, but also, that care, that I think you're providing to folks too, really making sure you understand what their individual needs are. That's fantastic. You touched on it briefly, and I think it would be good for some of the audience to maybe hear that transition. You talked about finding Thrivent during COVID and
Right, right.
doing some of that. Could you talk a little bit more about that journey as well?
Sure. When I left my company, I realized that it was time to do something else. And I feel like I had the proverbial, like, I wasn't willing as a little birdie to jump out of the nest on my own. And I felt like I needed a little bit of push. And as I've talked to small business owners, a lot of them have a similar journey. And there's few that were gung ho and we knew exactly what they wanted and really plowed their course in the way they wanted to go. But what I needed was that little nudge. And I realized that, my dad long, long time ago was going to start a business and things didn't work out for different reasons. But I realized in my parents, my mom's side of the family, many of them are small business owners. So seeing that, understanding that, and it was a great opportunity for me to kind of, well, what do I want to do now? I'm at a point now where I start to support my family. What does that look like? And I went on, that hunt, that discovery hunt of what I want to do the rest of my life. And so whether it was journaling, whether it was taking all these quizzes and tests and, get to know yourself and whatever, and what's your personality type and what's your Myers-Briggs score and all that, right? I just tried to bring as much of that to bear as I could, bring that to the table, and just spend some time reflecting, talking to my wife, talking to friends, and going, "This, I'm thinking about this." And I still remember in my journal, I had like 1 through 4 of things that I was going to do, and I didn't know if I could do all of those simultaneously, if it was going to be, how it was going to work out. But my goal was, okay, I'm gonna start here. And if I go through that and I fail at that, I'm gonna go to the next thing. I just kind of just kept knocking them off. And that first one was financial advisory, and I couldn't believe that that had come to the forefront. And I was like, "Am I supposed to be doing this?" And I realized that my own journey that I was already helping my coworkers
Mhm.
with their investments. I was already helping them do some budgeting. I was already helping them give them some financial advice. Obviously, I'm not getting paid for that. It's just being a friend, really
Mhm.
being a trying to be a friend, trying to be a help to those around you. And so it was such a privilege to be able to for them to trust me with that information. And it wasn't necessarily I didn't know all their stuff, but they were willing to ask me questions. And sometimes we disagreed on things. But we had an investing club that we were in where we'd go to lunch, we'd talk about stocks and investments
Mhm.
and all that. And so, I was already in that world and I really enjoyed, even though I was in engineering, I enjoyed the process side of engineering. And if you're involved in the process side of engineering, you're involved with key things. You're involved in a process that involves people, and it probably involves some type of equipment or machine. And so integrating all that together, I found was something that I enjoyed and that I felt like I did well with because I valued people. And when you value the people, well, when someone says machine's not working right, well, you just start to listen in a different way. And I brought that into the financial advisory space. And the other thing I brought into, I've always had this, I don't know if it's a gift or a talent or whatever, but I've always had a way of bringing people together and taking
Mhm.
care of a group of people and just trying to make sure that those folks were taken care of. And I've always been a bit of a peacemaker. So, I definitely have gotten more comfortable with conflict as I've gotten older, but kind of bridging that and helping people understand each other was always something that I enjoyed. So all of that kind of molded together, and the time spent alone and spent reflecting got me to where I am today. And then I got to the point where I was like, well, I'm going to be a financial advisor. Who am I going to work with?
Mhm.
Who am I going to work for? And I'm like, well, I've heard about these other firms and there's some things I liked about what I heard, and there's some things that probably weren't true that I heard that was something that they did way back when or whatever. I was like, how is this going to work? And so next thing I know, this guy at our church was there, and he said, I looked him up, and he worked for Thrivent, and I was like, who's Thrivent?
Mm.
So I started doing some research and spent some more time with him and understood more about what they were about, and I was like, wow, I can I feel like I can work for a company like this. This is great. Brings together so many of the things that I value and so many different ways that I want to serve clients and serve those that are under my care. And so what a great opportunity to, so just jumping into that. And it's been really, really good these last 5 years from that standpoint. And the transition from being a W-2 to being, commission was quite daunting and, quite challenging. And it's really more on the mental space. It honestly
Mhm.
is really that mental space of, and you start to really believe in yourself more. You start to believe in your abilities more. You start to trust the direction you have. And so I'm fond of, I really have discovered really in probably year 4, year 5, I realized through meeting a lot of small business owners that, you can be a semi awful person or not even a great person and be a good employee, maybe even be a great employee. But it's really difficult in the longer term to be a bad person or someone that doesn't value people or doesn't have a value system and really make it in business for the long term, especially if you're people focused or if you're people facing. It's really difficult to have. So it makes you develop your character. It makes you look at some of the ugly spots. It makes you dig a little bit deeper than you would have had to have dug as an employee. And so, and there's definitely a space for that. I had no real concept that I was ever going to be a business owner, and my goal was to be the best employee I could be, and to be a business owner within the company of what I was managing and
Right.
stewarding. But and have that mindset as a business owner, as a steward. But it's different when it's on you, and when it's about what you're bringing to the table. Um, that was a transformational year. Who I would, it wasn't planned, it wasn't part of the overall deal, but it's what the cards we were dealt, and so we ended up moving in 2020. I changed jobs, I changed careers, effectively employers, even though we're kind of self-employed, still have overhead and stuff by Thrivent. But, all of that changed in 2020. So, when I look back on that, I was like, "We had to have been crazy." But at the time, we just this is the path we're on,
Mhm.
and then we just took it day by day.
No, I love that story too because I think you highlight on so many key parts, especially around innovation and leadership. Some of it you have to dive in and do. It's people centric, right? You really do have to make sure you're working with people and understanding their needs. It takes sort of that, inner reflection, right, to really reflect on your skills, your strengths, and weaknesses, right, and how to develop those. So, I think that's just a great story and a great example. I'm so glad you shared it. Well, Billy, I have to admit, this has been just such a wonderful conversation. I think we could probably go on, for hours. I would love for us to continue the dialogue. It's so exciting to, collaborate with you on this podcast, and definitely
Absolutely.
look forward to working with you, here some more.
Absolutely, John. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for giving me a chance to share about a little bit about Thrivent, but more about me and just about my own personal journey. And if it's an encouragement or help to someone out there, that's wonderful.
Absolutely. I think especially for entrepreneurs out there, understanding some of the challenges you went through, but also, if you can really create that vision and path, there is a way, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Billy, and, we will look forward, and we'll make sure your contact information's up, and we
Sure.
will, continue the dialogue.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Look forward to
Thank
it.
you,
Thanks so
sir.
much.